I never imagined I'd be writing this, that I'd be sitting here staring at my phone, wondering how I managed to throw away 10 years of marriage and a handful of careless nights. And yet, here I am, heart in my throat, guilt gnawing at me like some relentless predator. Before it happened, life felt normal, safe, comfortable. My husband, Alex, and I had been together for over a decade. We shared routines, inside jokes, and memories that spanned nearly every corner of our lives. I trusted him completely, and I thought he trusted me the same. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Then came the coworker. His name is Ryan, and at first, he was just that guy you exchanged polite smiles with in the break room. Innocent conversations about projects, coffee, and weekend plans. But there was something in the way he laughed at my terrible puns that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. I think I wanted to feel noticed, wanted to feel excitement without considering the consequences. I told myself it was harmless, just a little harmless attention, nothing more. It started with texts, late-night messages about work, jokes, memes, silly things really, but I started looking forward to them. And then the tone changed, subtly. Flirty comments, teasing, nothing overtly sexual, but my chest would race every time my phone buzzed. I felt guilty, of course, a nagging, persistent guilt that I tried to ignore. But I told myself it was fine, just fun, just harmless. The progression was slow, almost imperceptible at first. A joke here, a compliment there, small secrets shared that I never would have told Alex. Each message sent felt thrilling, and I hated myself for it. I remember telling myself, "You're not doing anything wrong. You're not physically betraying him. It's just attention." But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. And then I crossed the line. I won't go into the explicit details, but there were moments, nights, where the barrier between innocent flirting and something more blurred. Guilt sank in like a stone in my chest. I started feeling anxious every time Alex asked about my day. I panicked when I thought he might notice a change in my behavior, my distracted smiles at my phone, the way I'd hide my screen when he walked into the room. I could barely sleep. Paranoia gripped me. I imagined him checking messages, catching me in the act, seeing the betrayal I could no longer ignore. Eventually, it happened. He found the messages. I can still see the horror in his eyes, the disbelief, the heartbreak. He stared at the phone like it had revealed some alternate universe where I didn't exist, or worse, where I existed as someone capable of betraying him completely. I tried to explain, but the words sounded hollow, even to me. I told him it started as nothing, just a silly distraction, but I couldn't keep it from escalating. I told him I loved him, that I never wanted to hurt him, that I'd do anything to undo it. I watched as his face crumpled, his trust collapsing into something unrecognizable, and realized that nothing I said could fix what I had broken. The next few hours were unbearable. Tension wrapped around our house like a suffocating blanket. Arguments erupted, crying, pleading, accusations. I wanted to make him understand, but every attempt to justify myself felt like stabbing him further. 10 years of shared history reduced to a few nights of careless choices. The weight of it was crushing. I kept thinking about all the moments we'd shared, the late-night talks, the vacations, the quiet mornings in bed, and how I had thrown them away for attention I didn't need, for excitement that wasn't worth the cost. I hated myself. I hated the cowardice that allowed me to rationalize it. I hated the thrill that made me forget everything I loved. As I write this, he's upstairs, silent. I haven't spoken, afraid that any word could undo the fragile remnants of communication left between us. I don't know if we'll survive this. I don't know if marriage can withstand a betrayal that came from someone who promised forever and then shattered it for a few nights of fantasy. All I know is that I am sorry. More than I can express in words, more than I can ever show. I would give anything to undo it, to turn back the clock, to be the person he believed I was. But I can't. All I have is this guilt, this shame, and the stark realization that my life as I knew it may be over. Update 1. The days after Alex found the messages felt like walking through a fog. Everything was muted, the sounds of the house, the air, even my thoughts. I would go through the motions, making coffee, folding laundry, glancing at my phone, but nothing felt real. I kept expecting him to yell at me, to storm out, to say something that would make me feel even smaller than I already did. Instead, he retreated, silent, withdrawn, like the person I had loved for 10 years had evaporated, leaving only a ghost in his place. We tried talking, or at least I tried. I would sit on the couch, hands wringing, eyes pleading, and pour out my remorse. I told him I hated what I had done, that I didn't deserve him, that I'd do anything to fix it. But he didn't respond the way I hoped. Sometimes he would nod, stiff and distant. Sometimes he would leave the room, slamming doors with a force that echoed my failure back at me. I could see in his face the betrayal, the disappointment, the heartbreak that no apology could erase. Friends noticed the change, though I barely managed to tell anyone. A few asked if everything was okay. I lied. I said work stress, fatigue, minor fights. How could I tell them the truth? That I had destroyed the trust of the one person who had built a life with me. That I had sabotaged 10 years of shared history for a fleeting thrill. The shame was too heavy to admit, even to those closest to me. Alex moved out temporarily a week after the discovery. I don't think he could breathe in the same space as me without the weight of betrayal pressing down. I understood why, but that didn't make it hurt any less. The apartment felt hollow without him. Every room was a reminder of what I had lost. I tried cleaning, organizing, anything to feel like I could regain control. But control was gone. Sleep became impossible. I would lie awake, phone clutched in my hand, staring at the dark ceiling, replaying every message, every laugh, every subtle choice that led me here. I wanted to scream at myself, to yell, to demand why I had done it, but the words never came out. I was trapped in the cycle of guilt, self-loathing, and desperate hope that maybe, somehow, he would forgive me. I started seeing a therapist. At first, I was defensive, convinced I didn't need someone to tell me I was wrong. But after a few sessions, I realized I had no framework to process this. I was impulsive, seeking attention, craving excitement, and somehow convinced it was harmless. Therapy forced me to look at the patterns I had ignored, the dissatisfaction I hadn't addressed in my marriage, my inability to communicate needs, and the recklessness that made me betray someone I loved. Communication with Alex was tentative. Sometimes we would exchange brief texts about logistics, bills, shared accounts, the dog's vet appointments. Rarely did it extend beyond that. I sensed he was watching, measuring, gauging if I was genuinely remorseful or still capable of the betrayal. And maybe he should be. I tried to reach out, small gestures, bringing his favorite coffee when I knew he'd be working late, leaving notes apologizing, acknowledging the pain I caused. Some he ignored, others he read, and I could see the hesitation, the guardedness in his response. It was clear he needed time, and I couldn't rush him. Guilt followed me everywhere, At work, I could barely focus. Every glance at my phone, every interaction with Ryan, the coworker, made me recoil in shame. I blocked him immediately, realizing that continuing any form of communication, however innocent it seemed, would only deepen the damage. I hated myself for ever feeling that rush, for ever thinking that small thrills could outweigh 10 years of love and trust. The hardest part was the quiet moments, the spaces between arguments or logistical conversations. Those were the moments that reminded me what I had lost. Alex's laugh, the way he held my hand, the comfort of routine. Gone, or at least suspended indefinitely. I realized that even if he returned, even if he forgave me, things would never be the same. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself easily. I also had to face the reality that people judge. Friends who knew about our marriage started avoiding the topic, hesitant to include me in plans. I could see the whispers, the subtle glances, the uncertainty about what I might do next. And that added another layer of isolation, another reminder that my actions had consequences far beyond the four walls of my home. Through therapy and reflection, I've started to understand why I did it. Not that it excuses anything, but understanding patterns is the first step towards preventing them. I craved validation, excitement, and attention I hadn't consciously realized I was starving for. I felt restless in a comfortable, safe life, and I made the worst choice possible to satisfy a fleeting impulse. It's ugly, it's painful, and it's the most honest I've ever been with myself. Alex has been distant, but not cruel. I see glimpses of him considering, maybe weighing forgiveness against the betrayal, but I know better than to hope. I can't make him forgive me. I can only continue to own my mistakes, respect his boundaries, and show through actions, not words, that I am committed to being the kind of person who would never betray someone I love again. There's no easy resolution here. Every day is a negotiation with myself, remorse, hope, fear, and accountability. I've started journaling, documenting every thought, every pang of guilt, and every moment of clarity. It's painful, but necessary. I have to live with what I did, and I have to learn from it. I don't know where this leaves us. Maybe Alex and I will rebuild, slowly, painstakingly. Maybe this marks the end of our marriage. Either way, I am forced to confront a truth I've never faced before. That betrayal leaves scars that nothing can erase. And love, once broken, must be carefully tended or it withers. All I can do now is continue to reflect, to take responsibility, and to hope, quietly, humbly, that someday, whether together or apart, the damage I caused will teach me to be better, to value trust more than temporary thrill, and to never repeat these mistakes again. The house feels emptier than I ever imagined possible, quiet in a way that's both peaceful and crushing. At first, every corner, every object, every memory was a painful reminder of what I had destroyed. But over time, the sting dulled just enough for me to start reflecting, truly reflecting on the choices that led me here. The divorce was finalized quietly. No dramatic courtroom scenes, no shouting matches, just the cold, clinical confirmation that our marriage, the life we built over 10 years, was over. Alex chose to cut off most contact, and I respect that. He doesn't owe me conversation or closure. The man I betrayed deserves space to heal without me hovering like a ghost, begging for forgiveness. I won't lie, acceptance didn't come easy. For weeks, I wanted to text, call, explain myself, cry, promise that I had learned my lesson. But I realized that none of that would undo the betrayal. My redemption wasn't his responsibility. I had to face myself, my actions, and my guilt. Therapy became my lifeline. I've been learning to confront patterns I had ignored for years. My impulsiveness, my craving for attention, my tendency to seek excitement without thinking about consequences. I've had to rebuild a sense of self-worth that I thought was tied to my marriage, only to realize that my value doesn't depend on anyone else's perception. But it does depend on integrity, honesty, and responsibility, and I had to learn that the hardest way possible. I also had to face the habits that contributed to my downfall. I cut back on nights out, on drinking, on anything that allowed me to escape myself. I've started journaling daily, reflecting on each choice and acknowledging every slip, however small, towards self-destruction. For the first time in years, I feel a sliver of control over my life again. The hardest part is knowing that Alex has moved forward in his own way. I don't know the details, he doesn't share them, but I can imagine him healing, maybe even dating again. And that thought, as much as it hurts, also brings relief. He deserves happiness, even if it's not with me. I can't be the person who taints his chance at rebuilding with guilt over my mistakes. I've also had to rebuild relationships with friends and family who noticed my spiral. Some were supportive but firm, reminding me of the gravity of my actions. Others kept their distance, and I don't blame them. Trust, once broken, isn't easy to restore. I'm learning that some bridges, once burned, may never be crossed again. And that's part of owning the consequences. Living with the guilt is a daily exercise in humility. Every quiet morning, every empty evening, I remember what I lost. And yet, I also recognize the lessons embedded in this pain. I've learned that fleeting thrills are never worth destroying something meaningful. That honesty, even when terrifying, is always the better choice. And that love without trust is fragile beyond repair. I catch myself reflecting on our marriage often. The small details haunt me. The way Alex would brush my hair back, the way he laughed at my terrible jokes, the shared routines that once seemed mundane but now feel sacred in hindsight. I realize that I didn't fully appreciate those moments until they were gone. I can't change the past, but I can let those memories teach me about the kind of partner I want to be in the future. Someone who values trust and commitment above temporary satisfaction. Acceptance, I've learned, isn't a sudden epiphany. It's gradual, punctuated by moments of clarity and relapse, tears and small victories. I've begun to forgive myself, not excusing my actions, not diminishing the harm I caused, but acknowledging that I am human, flawed, capable of making terrible mistakes, and also capable of growth. Some days I still imagine how life might have been if I had stopped at harmless flirting, if I had communicated my needs instead of seeking attention elsewhere. Those thoughts are painful, but they are also necessary. They remind me that every choice has consequences, and that even when the path seems harmless, the ramifications can be devastating. I don't know if I'll ever see Alex again, not in any romantic sense. Perhaps we will, someday, in a neutral setting, exchanging words that are polite but distant. Perhaps our paths will never cross again. But I have to accept that too. Part of growth is letting go, not just of the marriage, but of the fantasy that things could return to how they were. Moving forward, I am committed to being present in my own life, accountable for my actions, and vigilant against the impulses that led me astray. I want to rebuild trust in myself, to cultivate relationships based on honesty, respect, and care. And I hope, eventually, to find someone who deserves the version of me I am capable of being, someone who will never have to question my loyalty or my heart. This story isn't about redemption, at least not in the sense of earning back what I lost. It's about reckoning with the truth, facing the consequences of my mistakes, and learning to live with them. Painful as it is, it's also a teacher. And for the first time since this all began, I feel a glimmer of hope. Not that I can undo the past, but that I can grow from it, become wiser, and never make this mistake again. I betrayed the person I loved most in the world. I shattered 10 years of trust in a few careless nights. And I will carry that with me forever. But I am learning, slowly, to carry it with grace, to let it guide me, and to accept that some losses are permanent and that some lessons, as excruciating as they are worth enduring.